What's the most legendary work meltdown you've seen? Story 1. This story is regarding my ex-coworker. We work in an office, and this one day she must have been in a really bad mood. We were due to have a staff meeting, and she was supposed to arrange it all, hand out agendas, prepare the conference room, lock up, etc. It was about 10:05, and the meeting was at 10. My boss, who was also in a bad mood, came down to reception and asked what the hell was going on. Well, she just flipped out on him. She threw a bunch of paperwork at him and just started shouting about how she's fed up with him and is quitting. She then storms out of the office. My boss just stood there, then turned around and went back to his office. The rest of the staff made our way to the conference room for this meeting, and as we just sat there, it was really intense and awkward and deathly silent. We were all just looking at our boss, waiting for him to react. Surprisingly, he stayed super calm. Next thing you know, we hear someone unlock the front door and come in. We assumed it was this lady. We then start to hear furious typing. I mean, she must have been slamming her fingers on the keyboard because we could all hear it from upstairs. So we all just sat there listening to this noise, still deathly silent. Eventually it stopped, and this lady storms up the stairs and throws her quitting notice at my boss and leaves again. My boss just looks at it calmly, then finally addresses the rest of us and just said he will not tolerate being spoken to the way she spoke to him, and that was pretty much it. We carried on the day as normal. Still makes me laugh to think about it, though. That was a good day. Story 2. Guy got fired at my work for ordering high-cost items and saying they were for clients. They were purchased using state funds, and he would just take the items home. Well, he memorized the phone number receptionists use to page people. It's actually a phone number, so anyone is able to call it and it'll go through the speakers. So this guy called it and basically said all of these obscenities about people. It was like that scene from The Office where Michael roasts people for making fun of him. But this guy was very NSFW. It was kind of funny though. The best part was nobody could do anything about it because he was calling from an outside line and wasn't even in the office. Story 3. I studied for a master's degree in finance, which was known for being extremely high pressure and stressful, and both had my own non-entertaining breakdown as well as saw others. I'd seen things like a girl break down in tears during a lecture because of the sheer number of assignments we already had when another got assigned. I saw a guy break his pen and just leave the lecture, and several screaming fights among students apparently over group projects. The best one was actually pretty calm though. We had some guy get invited in to talk about some financial security. I forget the name and have totally left finance with no intentions to return, which effectively allowed you to profit if another person defaulted on their mortgage. About 10 minutes into the talk, this one student who everyone respected basically stood up and spent about 5 minutes completely talking this guy and his career into the ground. The guy kept looking around desperately and after that continued with his talk with the most awkward atmosphere with obvious disrespect just emanating from the students. He completely lost any authority in that room. Every question he got after that was basically snide, and people were openly laughing and booing at him. Story 4. I used to work for one of England's most well-known carpet companies at their head office and main warehouse in southeast London. Problem being, it was abundantly clear that there was a big divide between warehouse staff and office staff. Office tended to get paid at least $3,000 or $4,000 more per month than the warehouse did. The offices were decked out with fancy dining areas, smoking areas on the balconies, pool table and a chill-out room, and not to mention a big, expensive tropical fish tank display next to the seating area. The warehouse staff had to go out the back or side fire exits to go smoke. We were timed for how long we could go, and if we took too long, we had to make it up over lunch or stay late. And even though we were doing very heavy-duty manual labor, had to specialize in operating forklift trucks and carpet-cutting tables as big as a medium-sized swimming pool, we always felt like we were undervalued. Anyway, one particular staff member, let's call him Dave, loved to moan and whine about it on a weekly basis. Anytime we would be in the canteen and a group of white-shirt, stiff-collar, suited, snobby office guys would walk past, he would always make some snarky comment. "Privileged little bitches," vaguely mumbled under his breath. The office staff mainly rubbed it in his face by laughing as they got in the lift to go and play pool upstairs, or occasionally would say something from the smoking balconies if one of us was below, on the floor level, huddled around a smoking area bench. So I'm about halfway through my shift, middle of the week, when suddenly 3 forklift drivers come shooting down the aisles toward the cutting department, all beeping their horns and waving down anyone who would see them. One of the guys pulls up beside my area and said, "The boss just tried to fire Dave." Well, me, what do you mean tried to fire Dave? Turns out that Dave got pulled into a meeting with the warehouse manager and an office manager who was rather recently promoted from second-floor office staff to a head of department on the 4th floor. Well, he had enough of Dave always trying to have digs at the office team and his blatant disregard for respect and wanted to make an example out of him. But when he made his argument against Dave in front of the warehouse boss, he apparently made a load of stuff up about him just to make sure he got fired. Well, Dave didn't take too kindly to that and lunged across the office table and knocked out this office manager in one fell blow. Well, according to the warehouse manager a few weeks later, he told me that it was a punch so well executed that he wished he had filmed it in slow motion. But that's not all Dave did. We had a mini in-house radio station for the warehouse staff as it was such a large building. They pumped all sorts of music into the warehouse all day and occasionally interrupted it from one of the office girls who would announce any weekly, monthly, annual profits or staff member birthdays and so on and so on. Well, Dave broke into the glorified broom closet with a sound system and a microphone right after he knocked out the office manager. He kicked out the girl who looked after the desk there and locked himself in. He then spent the next 45 minutes using that microphone to verbally abuse every single office worker who had wound him up over the years, all in between songs boomed out into the warehouse. That was Michael Jackson with his hit song Beat It. Seemed appropriate choice after remembering when I saw Jeremy from accounts beating it in the smoking area balcony one late shift when he thought he was alone. Anyway, we have Cyndi Lauper up next with Girls Just Wanna Have Fun, a song dedicated to Janet on sales on floor 1, for the countless men she screwed in that office while spreading her diseases across the whole team. Get tested, boys. She may leave a lasting impression on you. Well, eventually the police were called and he was dragged out and we all had a meeting with our managers who told us that we had to sign new forms forbidding us from entering office areas without an office manager present, and that any other feuds between warehouse and office staff would be met with disciplinary action. Dave was a legend. Story 5. I'm a bagger at my local grocery store, first job, and we had just hired a new guy about 2 weeks earlier. Anyway, this guy gets his 15-minute break and comes back on time as normal. Only one problem. He is now high out of his mind. Spends about 30 minutes unbagging groceries before management notices and pulls him aside to talk to him about it. Also note, this guy hasn't spoken anything but gibberish for this time, but he freaks out, starts yelling in his gibberish, and throwing cans all around. Yep, that's it. Story 6. My best friend's dad was a tower crane operator. After 30-plus years on the job with a perfect safety record, he ended up having an accident. To this day, talking about it brings him to tears. He retired because of it, spent a week in the mental hospital because of it. He was moving a large piece of machinery up from street level to above the floor being worked on, a job he's done a million times before. Hoisting is a team operation with people all over the site working together. The machinery is several stories up when something lets loose and it swings and drops right into a crowded area at street level. The emergency calls from the injured and dying workers goes out on the radio. He's 20-plus stories up and can only watch the response. Well, he turns off the radios and sinks inside himself. After about an hour or so out of contact with the ground rescue team, a rescue team climbs up and he's coaxed down. 2 are dead, 3 are injured in the failure. Questions, investigations raised if he'd made an error in lifting, causing the collapse. While the grief and the doubt, the PTSD wreck him fast. And after a couple of days off on suspension, he is blackout drunk with a gun in his hand. His son finds him like this, passed out with a suicide note already written. He's admitted to a mental health service, eventually cleared of any wrongdoing by the inquiry. After several months, he's cleared to return to work, but he can't. He's lost the nerves needed and takes an early retirement package. But there is a happy ending here. After about a year of golfing, he got restless and took up studies in safety-related topics. After about a year of golfing, he got restless and took up studies in safety-related topics. After a few years, he moved into an advisory role, safety management, for tower crane and hoisting operators, where he educates the next generation. Story 7. He used to work for a collection agency. One day, a girl there had a bad call and left her desk. She went to the restroom, took a crap, and proceeded to smear said crap all over every inch of the bathroom. She then locked herself in a conference room while screaming and ranting incoherently, while she left strapped down to a stretcher and was not seen again. Story 8. One of my old coworkers told me about the biggest meltdown he ever saw. The job was pretty high stress to begin with, and people were always on the verge of screaming at each other. So this guy, let's call him Jake, had been working 12, 14-hour days, was on call 24 hours, had 2 hours of commuting a day, said he never saw his girlfriend who he lived with, missed his niece's first birthday because of work. Well, this dude was on edge. Enter Sally. Sally was in charge of invoicing and had spent the whole previous week on vacation, spending time with her daughter that was visiting. She came in on a Monday to finish up some billing, but was taking the rest of the week off for more vacation. She approached Jake while he was in the middle of working out some major issues, saying he needed to get some things for her to finish billing. Well, Jake told her he would get to it as soon as he could. Sally continued to ask like every 10 minutes. Getting more irritated with every request. Finally, she enters Jake's office. It's a big open area shared with coworker mentioned above, and nastily says, "It'd be real nice if you do your job so I can go home and see my family." Well, Jake proceeded to kick the door open behind him, breaking the frame and the automatic closer. At the end of the hall, he kicked another door open, putting a hole in the wall behind it. He then went to the equipment storage room and began throwing pieces of metal rigging, making a ton of noise. This drew the attention of others who came to check out what was going on. When someone asked what was going on, Jake said, "If that bitch says one more word to me, I'll be leaving in the back of a cop car." Well, Sally was gone by the time Jake calmed down enough to go back inside. Jake wasn't fired or even written up. Management knew the stress he was under, and Sally was just told to keep her distance. Also, Jake is me. My blood pressure was so high my vision was blurry. Story 9. I worked at this retail store for a couple of years. One of the assistant managers who I had to work with almost every shift was a complete creep and mentally unstable. Let's call him Eric. He did some stupid things before, like yelling at the cashiers, and also liked to make filthy sexual comments at me in the form of jokes. Keep in mind, this was a 50-year-old man, and I was 22, so Eric was always a total scumbag. But man, he had a complete meltdown one day during the holiday season. Since it was December and very busy, we had all the cash registers open, we had several managers. One of the assistant managers, we'll call him Carl, sat a small stack of shopping baskets on Eric's register with the intention to put them back at the front where they belong when the line came down. Eric came back from his lunch 10 minutes later. He saw the baskets on his space and flipped out. He whipped one of the baskets at the wall and threw another on the floor so hard it kind of bounced. He started screaming about how people were making his register a mess and how Carl did it on purpose to make him mad. Well, me and Carl were just like, "What the fuck, dude? You need to calm down or we'll call the general manager." Well, by this time, all the customers in line were like, "What the fuck, too?" A couple of them threatened to call corporate because at this point, Eric was a train wreck. His fists were clenched and his face was red, veins popping. One dude told Eric that he was gonna beat his ass. Then Eric called the cops and they came, took reports. Nothing happened though. All over some silly shopping baskets. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe and of course hit that like button, and we'll catch you for more stories in the next video.